In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between a clay mitt and a clay bar in terms of what I personally use, what I recommend you use, what to look out for, and just a bunch of things surrounding clay media and how to use it, why to use it, when to use it. If you're interested in the ones that I use, I'll link them down below. So let's go ahead and get into the video. So let's talk about the clay mitt, what I typically use, and then the clay bar. Now for years, now for at least the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, I've been strictly using a clay mitt. Not this one specifically. This one's from, wait, look at that, I have no idea. I don't use this one, I have another one, but I think this is like a fine grade one. This is from AM Details. This is their fine grade clay bar. Now to me, it's really just gonna come down to personal preference, because either one of these, including any other form of clay media, will do its job and clay the paint, because you do have the clay mitt, you do have the clay bar, you do have the clay disc that goes on the polisher, you do have the other forms of clay media, and it will get the job done. I personally think it comes down to more for preference, and not only preference in terms of how it performs on the paint surface, but also how you store them. So for instance, like and like how frequent you can use them. So like this one is, if you do drop it on the ground, you can just rinse it off and then you're good to go. But with this one, if you drop this one on the ground, it really catches all the debris and it really gets it stuck into the clay, and you can't really use it after that because you can't ensure that you've removed 100% of the debris. Now to be honest, I don't think I've ever really dropped this clay mitt. I think like a very few times. Whereas when I used to use the clay bar, it's much easier to drop these because like if you're working the surface, let's say this is on a vertical panel. If you're working the surface and and it catches a dry spot, your hand will keep on moving, but the clay bar will stop there and then it'll fall on the ground. Much easier than this one, because this one you have a much better grasp. You can put your hand in it and stuff. So as far as like which one is more likely to fall on the ground, I'm gonna go with the clay bar. But you can still drop down. But the point is, like, I think in terms of longevity, you can use the clay mitt more. And a lot of times, you know, people will say, like, I've seen people that continuously reuse the same clay bar over and over. They just like try to like keep on kneading it back and forth. So I honestly, like, again, I haven't really used a clay bar in years now, so I haven't really used it much. So spray a little bit here. So if you do spray it down and you're working the surface, and then you do still happen to catch a dry spot like this, the clay bar would stop, but your hand will keep on moving. And if you're on the vertical panel, it will fall down quite easily. And to me, I think it just primarily comes down to a preference, because like this one, I just like the way it fits. I can hold it better. It's easier to rest on the surface, meaning I can clay what I need to clay, and then if I need to just put it down for whatever, I can just put it on the back side and I just know it's gonna stay there. With this one, like, it can easily fall down, or like debris can fall on it, and then like you gotta mesh it, you know, you gotta patty it up again. So for me, it's much easier to use this one because I can just work a larger area. So like it's easier to spray, right? And this is the lithium luster lube. You can just spray it, right? And then work large surfaces, and you can feel it pretty well. Like you can feel the texture on the paint, and you can feel it being removed. So that's why I'm a fan of this one. Larger surface area, better handle. Whereas like with the clay bar, granted, if I broke off a bigger piece, this would be a fair comparison. But even then, like, even if I were to triple the size, it's not going to be the same coverage as the clay mitt. So even if I were to triple it, it's still not going to have the same coverage area. And as far as effectiveness, I mean, again, I've clayed overspray. I've like basically that's probably like the biggest testament to the product for clay bars, is like removing overspray. And I've been able to remove heavy overspray from vehicles with just a clay pad, with the clay mitt, and using the fine grade, not even the medium grade. So if you are worried that it might not be strong enough or something, we'll get the medium grade. That way it has more of a bite. But I've never had any problem with the fine grade clay mitt. Again, I don't know which one this is. I don't know if it's fine or medium, and I don't know what brand it's from. But I've always used the Nanoskin Fine Grade, and I've never had any real issues with it. So where I will say that the clay bar does beat the clay mitt, or really any other form of clay media, is on the tighter area. So let's say under behind the door handle on the A pillars, maybe some B pillars, and you were like you have to get a real tight fit somewhere like on the front bumper and such. That would get, I'd give it to the clay bar, because you can just, you know, mold it to whatever area you need it to fit to, as specific as you need to get. You can mold it to that, you know, to that specific part. But this one, you got this big old block of a clay mitt, and it's just harder to get into those very specific areas. So in that regard, I will give it to the clay bar. So you know, it would be ideal to have both. I would primarily use the clay mitt, and then where needed, when needed, you will use a clay bar. But you know, all in all, I would highly recommend the clay mitt, because I just feel it's faster than this clay bar, because you have to continuously mesh it. Once you use it, you can't use it as long as this one, and just the likelihood of dropping it is much higher with the clay bar than with the clay mitt. Again, personal preference. I'm not saying right or wrong. That's just my opinion on what I use it. Now, in terms of how long these last, it really just depends. Now, a downside to these is how you store it. So, and really with any clay media, because you need, like, once it heats up, it gets real tacky and real sticky to whatever surface it's touching. A towel, a wash mitt, a pad, a plastic box, like, it's gonna stick to that surface. So it is easier to maintain these in like a small box like this. It's easier to keep it here in this box because it's small, it can't move around much, and even if it gets sticky, like it is in this small little box. But with this one, if it starts heating up, which like for me, it happens a lot because I'm always mobile and I'm always outside, it gets real tacky. And again, like if you put a towel on it, if you put it on a wash mitt, like it will stick to it, and after a while you will start to change the texture of it because you keep on lifting it up. So that's also a downside to it. But you know, I always just make sure that I always keep the clay mitt facing up wherever it's at, and just trying to make sure that it's not going to move around in the vehicle, or that I'm not going to like smush it with another item, because over time it will deteriorate the clay parts, and then you'll need a new one. But all in all, I will still give it, in terms of longevity, to this one over the clay bar. But again, as far as the actual mechanics of it, like, you're gonna spray the product down, right? And then you're literally going to work it in. And if you feel the roughness, if you can hear the texture, the coarseness to it, then you just keep on working it until it's done. And then you move on to the next section. You always want to keep it lubricated. And absolutely nothing changes with this clay mitt. You're gonna spray your lubricant. You're gonna work it in. You're gonna wait, and then you could, if you want, here. And see how it's just naturally much larger sections. So even if it does take, let's say, a little longer versus the clay bar, because you're covering such a larger real estate, it still goes by faster than the clay bar. And then you do that. Then you take your towel, wipe it down, and then you have a clean surface and super smooth. Now remember though, regardless if you do with the clay bar or the clay mitt, it still clayed the vehicle entirely well. It's ready for the next step if you're gonna apply a wax or go into paint correction. So either way, it's going to work. You just have to see what you like. I personally would recommend the clay mitt. I think they're a bit more expensive, but again, it lasts longer and less margin for error in terms of dropping it. So I would just personally prefer the clay mitt, and that's what I recommend. Not a big fan of the clay disc for the polisher, because that's better for like larger flat surfaces, but once you get into like the concave areas or anything that's not just a complete flat surface, it doesn't work as efficient, especially in the tighter spots like the A pillars, B pillars, C pillars, bottom rocker panels. So that's what I would go with. Boom, and just like that, we are done. Hopefully you learned something. Let me know if you have any other comments, questions. If I didn't cover something that you wanted me to cover, I'll try to answer them in the comment section, or create some story on Instagram or live, or reply, or make another, I don't know, I'll get to it somehow. So let me know any comments, questions, concerns down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.